In the quiet hours of the night, when the world forgets to listen, some stories begin to whisper. Welcome to FolkFear, a place where ancient rituals never truly die, where lullabies carry teeth and grief becomes a doorway. Tonight, we bring you a tale not meant to be sung, a lullaby buried in dirt and sorrow, a melody passed from mother to daughter, not out of love, but out of desperation. This is the Hollowing Song, a haunting woven from silence and sacrifice. What happens when sorrow becomes louder than death, when the dead return, but never quite as they were? Light a candle, lock your doors, and don't hum along, because some songs remember you. The sky had forgotten how to breathe. Mina stood by the grave, her fingers wrapped around a candle that refused to stay lit. The fog was thick tonight, thicker than it had been since the funeral. It slithered low, hugging the gravestones like a mourner too exhausted to stand. The wind didn't move. The trees held their breath, and beneath her boots, the earth still felt freshly disturbed, like a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. 7 nights. That's what the old stories said. If you grieved hard enough for 7 nights, if you wept with your soul and sang the lullaby with your whole broken heart, something might hear you. Mina hadn't told anyone, not her father, not the village priest, certainly not the others who had whispered behind her back since Luca died. 2 halves born together, 1 half now buried. That's what they whispered, as if twins were curses instead of miracles. Luca had always been the wild one, the light behind every closed door. But the light had gone out 3 weeks ago, when they found him hanging in the old bell tower, his body swinging slowly, as if rocked by an invisible cradle. No note, no final words, just silence, as if the world itself had taken him and simply stopped. The funeral was rushed. The priest muttered the usual phrases, and the grave was dug on holy ground, though Mina knew Luca had stopped believing in anything holy long before his death. But she believed in something else, something older, something the mothers only spoke of after too much wine, something wrapped in sorrow and stitched with lullabies. They called it the Hollowing Song, a song only sung in secret, a melody that could unbury the dead if you meant every word with the full weight of grief, if you were willing to give something in return. Mina had found the song in her mother's journal, hidden beneath a floorboard after she died. The lines were scrawled with shaking hands. The notes were marked with blood. But most haunting were the final words written below the melody. Do not sing it unless your heart is truly empty. It will come, but it will not forget the cost. Tonight, her heart felt like a hollow drum. Luca was gone, gone in a way that left her breathless in the mornings and sleepless at night. She had tried everything, prayers, candles, even silence. Nothing worked. Nothing brought him back. So now she stood above his grave. The wind still refused to blow, and in the thick stillness, Mina began to hum. Softly at first, a single note trembling like a tear, then the second, then the third. The lullaby was beautiful, too beautiful. Each note felt like it didn't belong in this world, like it came from somewhere deeper, colder, older. Her voice cracked halfway through, and her eyes spilled over, but she didn't stop. She sang the entire song, every aching word, every haunting rise and fall. And when she finished, the world held its breath. Nothing happened. No thunder, no lightning, no earth shuttering open, just the candle finally flickering out. Mina waited and waited, and just as she turned to walk away, she heard it, the faint creak of a door hinge, but there were no doors here. She spun around, and in the fog, just a few feet from the grave, stood Luca. Barefoot, still in the same clothes he'd been buried in, head tilted slightly to the side, and his eyes, they didn't blink. He said nothing, only hummed the same lullaby she had just sung.
Luca did not blink. Not when Mina gasped his name. Not when she stepped toward him with shaking hands. Not when she wept and fell to her knees at his feet. He simply stood there, still as the trees, silent as the grave he no longer belonged to, and humming, softly, endlessly, the lullaby she had sung just moments before. The hollowing song. She dared not say it aloud again. Mina touched his arm. It was cold, not just from the night air, but a deeper cold, the kind that didn't come from weather, but from absence, a hollowness beneath the skin, a stillness that felt wrong. His chest didn't rise, no breath, no warmth, no heartbeat. But he was here. "Luca," she whispered. He turned to her slowly, as if remembering the name from some distant dream, his head tilted too far, like a puppet unfamiliar with its own strings, and his lips curled, not into a smile, but something close, close, and uncanny. Mina brought him home before the sun could rise. She told no one. Not her father, still locked in grief and whiskey. Not the priest who would have called it blasphemy. Not the neighbors who had already begun looking at her with pity and suspicion. She told herself it was shock, that Luca just needed time. Time to adjust, time to wake up fully. But as the days passed, the illusion cracked. He did not eat. Plates of food sat untouched, growing cold beside him. He did not sleep. She'd find him standing in the hallway at 3 a.m., humming to the walls. He did not speak. Not words, at least. Only the tune, over and over, as if it was all that remained of him. And worse, something else began to change. It started with the animals. First, the neighbor's cat found dead on the porch, eyes wide, chest caved in. Then 2 birds fell from the sky mid-flight, landing like forgotten toys on the village square. A goat was found lying still in its pen, no wounds, no blood, just a hollowed chest and a missing heart. The healer, old Toma, spoke in hushed tones. "An omen," he muttered, "like before, like the winter of sorrow." No one understood, not yet, but the air grew heavy, thicker, like the forest was creeping closer, like the fog had weight. And all the while, Luca stayed silent, watching, humming. Mina tried to ignore it, tried to hold on to the image of her brother, the real one, the boy who danced barefoot in storms, who carved little animals out of wood and left them on her pillow,
who sang songs off-key just to make her laugh. But that boy was gone. What stood in his place was not entirely him. He moved too quietly, he smiled too slowly, and sometimes when she looked at him too long, she felt like something else was looking back. One night she woke to find him standing by her bed, not moving, not blinking, just staring. The song hummed from his lips, barely audible. Mina sat up in the dark. "Luca?" she whispered. He didn't answer, but from somewhere beyond the window, the wind began to sing with him, and somewhere in the village, a dog began howling. Then silence. Then, another animal gone by morning, its chest opened, its heart missing.
The fog arrived with purpose. It no longer drifted lazily between trees or rolled gently down the hills. It clung now. It listened. It seeped through the cracks of doors, wrapped around chimneys, and slid beneath floorboards like a living thing seeking warmth or memory. The villagers noticed. Old women began locking their windows before dusk. Children were told not to hum, especially not at night. And Toma, the healer, began burning sage that reeked of vinegar and rot. Mina heard the murmurs when she passed through the market. "The mist is too thick. The animals know something. There's something wrong with that girl's house." She kept her head down and her lips sealed, because she too had begun to hear the whispers, not from the villagers, but from within the fog. It spoke like breath against glass, not in words, but in memories. Her mother's voice calling her name, her brother's laughter echoing where no one stood, and always, beneath it all, the song. A melody just below hearing, a lullaby that slithered beneath the skin. She needed answers. And so, on the coldest morning yet, she returned to the one place she had sworn never to enter again, her mother's attic. It still smelled of dust and old lavender, of grief pressed between pages. Her mother had spent hours up here, alone, after the miscarriage, a child Mina had never met, a sibling never born. The floorboards creaked in protest beneath her feet. Cobwebs caught in her hair as she rummaged through trunks filled with yellowing journals, dried flowers, and cracked candle stubs. That's when she found it. A book wrapped in mourning cloth. No title, no name, but she recognized the trembling script inside. It was her mother's handwriting. My mother taught it to me in a dream. Her mother taught it to her while dying. The song is old, older than the church, older than the stone. It comes from the hills, from the forest, from grief that refuses to rest. She turned the pages. The words grew darker. The hollowing song does not belong to us. It was given by a spirit in the shape of a weeping tree. It promised us return, but only through exchange. When I sang it, I wanted to hold my child again, just once. I woke with blood in my mouth and the crib rocking itself. I burned the song that morning, but it sings itself back into my dreams. It is not mercy. It is not love. It is a debt. Mina read until her hands trembled and her breath fogged the pages, and then she saw the name for the first time. Soraya, the midwife. The woman who long ago lost 7 children in a single winter. Legend said she wandered into the forest to die of sorrow and returned with the song. The song she claimed was a gift from the spirit of the forest, a spirit with a face like bark and breath like smoke, a spirit that asked for nothing at first,
But then the stories grew darker. After Soraya's children came back, hollow-eyed and quiet, the village changed. Animals began to vanish. Dreams turned black. And when spring came, the snow melted to reveal something buried beneath it. Hearts, dozens of them, frozen, preserved, arranged in circles. The village accused Soraya of witchcraft, but before they could act, she vanished. Her house burned itself to the ground. The forest reclaimed everything. Only one note was found, carved into stone where her hearth once stood. I asked for life. It gave me silence. Mina closed the journal with shaking hands. Downstairs, Luca was humming again, but the pitch was lower now, slower, as if something else was humming through him. That night, Mina woke to the sound of weeping. She followed it to the hallway, and there, in the fog that had seeped through the window frame, she saw a shape. A woman, bent, face obscured, cradling something in her arms. Mina whispered, "Mama?" The shape turned. Its face was not her mother's. It had no face, only bark and two hollow sockets where eyes should be. The hallway filled with smoke. The woman, or the spirit, opened her mouth, and from within came the lullaby. But this time it was not beautiful. It was hungry.
Grief is not loud. It is not the sobs that shatter the air at funerals, nor the wails that echo through churches. Real grief is quiet. It settles like dust. It waits like rot beneath floorboards. And in Mina's house, it had taken root. Luca no longer left the upstairs bedroom. He sat by the window all day, unmoving, watching the forest. And at night, he hummed. Always that same haunting melody, the hollowing song, but slower now, drawn out, as though each note were being pulled from something deeper than memory, as though something ancient were remembering itself through him. Mina tried to stay strong. She lit candles, she cooked his favorite meals, though they sat untouched. She washed his old clothes, she brushed his hair. She told herself he was healing, that he was confused, that he just needed more time. But deep down, beneath all her denial, something had begun to unravel. It started with the mirrors. Each morning, the glass would be fogged, not with steam, but with breath, cold breath, despite no one having entered the room. Sometimes, when she caught her reflection, she'd see Luca standing behind her, even when she knew he was upstairs. And then came the dreams. The first was gentle, her mother's voice, soft and trembling, singing the lullaby while rocking an empty cradle. But the second dream bled into a nightmare. In it, Mina stood in a field of cribs, dozens of them, each one rocking, each one empty, each one humming the song. And her mother stood in the center, eyes sewn shut, whispering, "He was not the first. You are not the last. The forest keeps what we give." Mina woke with a scream caught in her throat, and downstairs she heard it, not the lullaby, but the creak of a cradle. She didn't own one. The house had begun to speak, not in words but in rhythms. The floorboards groaned in time with the song. The wind howled in harmony, and in the silence between verses, Mina could hear breathing, not hers, not Luca's, but something else, deep, measured, ancient.
She stopped sleeping. She stopped eating. Her skin grew pale and her eyes red-rimmed, but still she stayed. Because what else could she do? This was her brother, her twin, her other half. Even if he no longer cast a reflection in the water, even if she once caught him standing in the garden in the middle of the night, surrounded by dead birds in a perfect circle, even if he now responded to her voice not with words, but with that slow, dreadful hum. Then came the night she found the bones. She had gone to the well to draw water. The bucket rose heavy, too heavy. Inside it, a fox, freshly dead, its chest hollowed, its eyes open, and tucked beneath it, a jawbone, human, small, like a child's. She dropped the bucket and ran. When she returned home, Luca was waiting. He was sitting at the kitchen table, head tilted, fingers stained with something dark. On the table in front of him was a wooden carving, a bird, its chest hollowed, its beak wide open in song. Mina wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, she stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she picked up the carving. It was beautiful, haunting, painfully detailed, too detailed. And carved along the wings, in tiny, precise letters, was the song. Every note, every word, every promise. Sing with sorrow, give with love, life for life, heart for heart. Luca looked up at her then, and for a moment, just a flicker, something ancient smiled through his eyes. Not him, not her brother, something that had worn grief like a mask for centuries. They started finding the bodies, not just animals now, but something worse. It began with a child's doll left in the village square. Its chest was carved open as if by tiny claws. Inside it, where stuffing should have been, someone had placed a dead sparrow, hollowed, heartless. A warning, a whisper. Then came the real children. The first was Maris, a girl of 6, quiet and bright. She vanished from her bed one fog-heavy night, the window latch left open, her sheets still warm. The villagers searched the hills, they tore apart the woods, they even dug up parts of the graveyard. But there was no trace. Only her lullaby book, found at the edge of the forest. Pages torn out, the final one soaked in something red, scrawled with a single line. She sang it in her sleep. The mothers grew terrified. One by one, they began confessing the same nightmare, that they too had begun humming the song at night, not wide awake, but in dreams. Dreams where their lost ones whispered in their ears, where cradles rocked, where tiny hands pulled gently at their hair. Some woke with dry lips as if they had sung all night. Others swore they never closed their eyes at all, and yet remembered the entire song by morning. The priest tried to intervene. He ordered prayers, fasting, holy water on every doorstep. But the song crept through stone and scripture. It had no need for doors. Mina watched the village unravel and knew it had begun with her. Every missing child, every dead bird, every whispered note, they all echoed the moment she sang the hollowing song aloud.
It was not a lullaby. It was a summons, and something had answered. She returned to her mother's attic, to the journal hidden in shadows. Flipping past the trembling notes and warnings, she found a page she hadn't noticed before. It was written in a different hand, older, sharper. Do not believe it wants the dead. It wants the living. The grieving are only the gate. Below the writing, a crude diagram, a circle of roots, 7 hearts placed like petals, and a child's skull in the center. It was a ritual. Mina realized the song was not just a curse, it was a bargain, a trade sealed by melody, sorrow as currency, the womb as the gateway. She remembered Soraya, the midwife from the legend, whose children returned from death and then vanished again, along with an entire village. No one ever found her body, only her legacy. The song passed in whispers, the melody sung in mourning, the hunger disguised as hope. Mina closed the journal. Outside, fog crawled across the grass like fingers searching for a door. She heard a knock, slow, deliberate, 3 times. When she opened the door, no one was there. Only a bundle of dried flowers tied with black thread, the kind midwives used to wrap stillborns. Inside the bundle, a lock of blonde hair, a cracked tooth, and a single line written on birch bark. You sang, we heard, feed us more.
There are places the wind does not touch. Deep in the mist-drenched hills, beyond where the old paths fade and the stones forget their names, there lies a clearing the villagers do not speak of, a place where trees grow in a perfect circle, twisted, gnarled, and always weeping sap, even in the heart of winter. Mina went there at dawn. She walked alone, barefoot through frostbitten grass, guided by instinct and the rhythm of the song now etched into her breath. Behind her, the village sat hushed. Ahead of her, the forest pulsed, alive in a way that felt wrong. She had to know. She had to see the thing Soraya had seen, the one who gave her the song, the one they called a spirit, though no one ever dared name it aloud. The clearing welcomed her with silence. No birds, no wind, only the slow drip of amber sap from the trees, like blood from a wound that never healed. At the center stood a tree unlike the rest, ancient, blackened, with bark curled like skin peeled back from bone. Its trunk was wide, hollowed out in the middle like a cradle or a mouth, and its branches hung low, as if bent in mourning. Mina stepped forward, heart pounding. The air thickened. The hollow of the tree exhaled. A sound, not quite a growl, not quite a whisper, slithered from its core. And then she saw her. The spirit emerged not with footsteps, but with silence, as if the forest had paused to make room for something older. She was tall, robed in bark and veils of smoke. Her face was shifting, at once the face of a mother, a corpse, and a tree with too many eyes. Her arms were long and thin, her fingers like roots reaching for warmth. And from her mouth, the lullaby spilled, not sung, but breathed. The melody curled into Mina's bones like frostbite. "Why did you call me?" the spirit asked. Not aloud. She spoke through the leaves, through Mina's veins.
Mina fell to her knees. "My brother, I wanted him back." The spirit tilted her head. "He came, but not as he was." "I know. He hums your song. He's empty." The spirit stepped closer. "You fed me sorrow. I returned a form. That is the bargain." Tears spilled down Mina's face. "I didn't know. I didn't mean." "You sang," the spirit said, her voice now like splitting wood. "You meant every word. That is all that matters." Mina sobbed. "Take him back, please." The spirit bent low, her breath smelling of soil and old milk. "Then give me something living, something warm, something that does not want to die." Mina shook her head. "No more." The spirit rose, towering now, her veil unraveling to reveal a skull crowned with antlers and teeth where there should have been eyes. "You are too late," she said. The roots beneath the clearing stirred, the trees groaned, and behind Mina, the fog parted to reveal a circle of mothers, pale, barefoot, eyes empty, humming the lullaby in unison. Mina screamed. The spirit leaned closer. "You opened the door. You will keep it open, and you will learn. Grief is the most obedient kind of prayer." Then she was gone, swallowed back into bark and shadow. Mina fled, but the forest was not done with her. Every tree she passed whispered her name. Every branch reached like fingers, and by the time she stumbled out, gasping into the daylight, she knew the truth. She hadn't just summoned her brother back. She had awakened it. And it was still hungry. The dead are meant to stay where they're buried. That's what the villagers used to believe. But now, they weren't so sure. Children were missing. Animals lay gutted in the fields. Fog crept inside homes, even when the doors were locked. And through it all, that song, soft, beautiful, rotten to the core. Mina no longer left the house by day. The mothers had begun watching her, from windows, from doorways, with eyes that no longer blinked enough, eyes that looked like Luca's. She had returned from the forest broken, her skin scratched, her voice thin, and upstairs her brother sat in silence, humming to the walls. Sometimes she found things beneath his bed, bits of fur, teeth, feathers, bones wrapped in cloth. One morning, he was gone. No sound, no warning, just an empty chair by the window and the scent of sap trailing out the door. She followed him, past the field, past the chapel, all the way to the graveyard where they had buried him. The fog curled tightly around the headstones, refusing to lift. The birds were gone. She found him kneeling before his own grave, head bowed, fingers pressed against the dirt, still. For a moment, she thought he was praying. Then she saw what he had done. The soil had been disturbed, not by shovel, but by hand. Claw marks, fingernails, deep gouges in the earth like something had crawled out. Her stomach turned. She stepped closer. "Luca!" She turned to him, and in his hands was a piece of fabric, torn, rotten, familiar. Her breath caught. It was the shirt they had buried him in, the real one. She fell to her knees and began digging with trembling hands. The earth gave way easily, as if it wanted to be opened. And there, beneath the soil, wrapped in funeral cloth and cold as marble, was Luca's body, untouched, still, face peaceful in death. Her world tilted. Then who, what had she brought home? She backed away shaking, the truth clawing up her throat like bile. The thing living in her house, the boy humming lullabies in the dark, was not her brother. She turned to run, but the village had already found her. They had followed the humming, drawn by grief or hunger or both. 12 women stood at the edge of the graveyard, mothers. Their faces pale, their mouths shut tight, but each one carried something in her arms, a bundle wrapped in cloth, rocking gently. Mina stepped back. "What are you doing?" One of them stepped forward, Annelle, the baker's wife. She looked empty, too still. She whispered, "They're coming back. We just have to keep singing." Mina shook her head. "No, it's not them. It's wearing them." Another mother spoke. "We know." Mina froze. "What?" They all looked at her with matching, hollow smiles. "It's better than the silence," they said. Then they began to hum, one by one, soft at first, then louder, and from the trees behind them the fog moved. It peeled away, not like mist, but like flesh, revealing shapes. Children, but not as they were, too tall, too thin, eyes too black, teeth too white, and all of them humming. Mina backed away, heart pounding, tears streaking down her face. Behind her, the grave whispered, "You brought it back!" And in the distance, the chapel bell began to ring. But no one had pulled the rope. Grief has a lineage. It weaves through time like a thread, passed not in words, but in songs whispered in the dark. The hollowing song did not begin with Mina, nor with Soraya. It had been growing for centuries, fed by silence, stitched into lullabies, cradled in arms that once held the dead, and always carried by mothers. Mina sat alone in her mother's room, holding the old journal like a wound pressed against her chest. Her hands shook as she turned the pages. She had searched the grave. She had seen her brother's real body. She had faced the thing wearing his face. Now she needed the truth her mother had tried to bury. And she found it, not in words, but in drawings. On the final page, hidden beneath a glued fold of paper, was a sketch. 3 cradles, 3 names. Luca, Mina, and one more. The 3rd sibling. Unnamed. Lost before birth. Never spoken of again. But her mother had not forgotten. Below the drawing was a single line. "I sang to bring her back. I failed, but the song remembered me." Mina's throat went dry. All her life she had felt the gap, the strange dreams, the tug in her chest, the feeling that someone had always been missing. Now she knew why. Her mother had sung the hollowing song long ago, not aloud, but in despair, in a whisper, in a dream. and it had listened. Mina remembered her mother's final days, the sleep-talking, the weeping, the way she clutched her stomach as if something were still inside, still waiting to be born. She died screaming. The priest said it was fever, but Mina now understood. The spirit doesn't care about volume. It doesn't need incense or sacrifice or ritual. It only needs one thing, a heart cracked wide enough for a song to slip in. And now, she was not the only one who had sung. She walked to the chapel, the village now half empty, half haunted. Mothers were humming behind closed doors. Cradles rocked with no hands. Footsteps echoed at night where no children played. Inside the chapel, she found the priest on his knees, eyes glazed, mouth open, dead. His chest hollowed, his heart gone. And across the altar, carved in blood, was, "She sang, you all listened." Mina lit a single candle, and in its flicker she saw them, dozens of them, standing in the pews, mothers, daughters, grandmothers, all humming, all swaying, bound by the same lullaby, the same wound. She backed away. At the edge of the room, a woman stepped forward, older, wrinkled, eyes wet with memory. She held out a bundle. Mina unwrapped it. A music box. Inside, a spinning figure, a mother rocking a child. The box played a slow, warped version of the hollowing song, notes dragged, twisted. The woman whispered, "We don't want to forget them, so we keep singing, and the forest keeps listening." Mina clenched her fists. "You're letting it in!" "No," the woman said. "It's already here. It wears our children like skin. It speaks through the ones we lost, and it promises we never have to be alone again." The music box slowed, stopped, and in the silence that followed, every woman in the chapel whispered the same word: "Soon." Mina turned and fled, heart thundering in her chest, because she understood now. The hollowing song was not just a curse, it was an inheritance, and every mother, even her own, had kept it alive.
Luca was changing, not slowly, not subtly, but all at once, as if something had decided it no longer needed to hide. Mina found him in the garden just before dawn, barefoot, shirtless, his skin pale and damp with dew, fingernails blackened, eyes too wide. He was humming, of course, but not just the lullaby now. He hummed names, names Mina didn't recognize, names that didn't sound like they belonged to this village or this time. And when she stepped closer, she heard him whisper beneath the melody, "They all come back, they all come back, if something else takes their place." He turned his head, slowly like a doll, and smiled at her. Mina saw sap leaking from the corner of his mouth. She ran. That evening, she locked herself in the root cellar with every book, note, and scrap of lore she had. Candles flickered. The shadows felt alive. She flipped through pages filled with scrawled warnings and desperate prayers, her mother's journal, Soraya's ritual, and then something new.
a diagram of an ancient exchange, one side drawn in red, children, the other, small animals, blood, mothers. At the bottom, written in a hand not her mother's, but older, cracked with age. Sorrow opens the door, song invites it in, but to stay, it must feed. Mina realized then the thing in Luca's skin wasn't surviving, it was thriving because the village had begun to sing, and sorrow was everywhere. That night, she followed the humming through the fog, past the well, past the chapel, and into the orchard where Maris, the vanished girl, had once played. There she found her, standing in a white dress, far too still for a child. At first, Mina's heart leapt, but then the girl turned. Her eyes were empty sockets, and her mouth moved without sound, until it opened too wide, and a man's voice spilled out. I was promised warmth. I was promised hearts. Mina screamed. The thing tilted its head, sniffed the air like an animal. Then it said, in Maris's voice this time, "You'll sing for me soon." The girl vanished into the trees. Mina collapsed, shaking, vomiting. She knew now. This wasn't resurrection, it was possession. Each returned child was just a vessel. Each vessel fed the forest. And Luca, the thing in his form, was becoming the mouthpiece of something much larger. That night, Mina tried to destroy him. She gathered salt, fire, prayer. She lit a circle of candles in the room where he sat, humming in the dark. And with trembling hands, she struck a match and whispered, "Forgive me." The flame caught, but he didn't move. He sat still, smiling, until he finally spoke. "You can't burn what grief has claimed." The fire died in an instant. The candles snuffed themselves out, and the room filled with voices. Not screams, lullabies, dozens, hundreds. Mina clutched her ears, and then, from the darkness, she saw a shape emerge. Small, thin, familiar. It was a child. Eyes glazed, skin stitched, heart beating in the wrong place, outside the body, cradled in both hands. It reached out and placed the heart at Mina's feet, and in a voice not its own, it whispered, "Let me stay. Give me something warm to trade. Someone who still cries. Someone you still love." Mina backed away, horror sinking in. Resurrection was never the point. It was reproduction. They weren't raising the dead. They were planting the hollowing song into the living. And every time someone sang it in sorrow, another vessel bloomed. The chapel smelled of wax and soil. 13 women gathered there that night, cloaked not in shadow, but in something heavier, resignation. Their eyes were pale with sleeplessness, their mouths pressed tight, as if silence could keep their children safe just a little longer. But silence hadn't helped. So now they chose song. Mina stood in the doorway, heart hammering in her chest. She had come to plead, to beg them to stop. But they were already humming, low, unified, like a lullaby sewn into breath. At the altar stood Anel, holding a torn scrap of fabric. Mina recognized it. It once belonged to Maris, the missing girl, stitched with tiny daisies, washed clean, but still carrying the scent of grave soil. "It's the only way,"
Annelle said, not looking up. No, Mina said. You don't understand what it brings. Annelle turned slowly. Her smile was sad and empty. We do. Another woman stepped forward, Marta, whose son had vanished just 2 days ago. He came to me, she whispered, in a dream. He held my hand. He hummed the song. He said I could bring him home if I just stopped fighting it. Mina stepped backward, throat dry. It's not them. You know that. They have their voices, their names, their touch. It's wearing them. Maybe, said another mother, but that's still more than silence. The candles flickered, even without wind. The room seemed to pulse, as though the song itself had weight now. I saw the spirit. It told me what it wants. It doesn't want our grief. It wants our willingness. It wants us to be the ones who open the door. Annelle nodded. And we have. It's open now. What's left to do is let them through. Then she raised her voice and sang the first full verse of the hallowing song. Others joined. Harmony formed, sweet and aching, too beautiful, too familiar. And the air shifted. The wooden beams groaned overhead. The stone beneath their feet began to sweat. Outside, the fog thickened, not creeping anymore, but rolling, as if flooding the world. And from far off, from the hills, the trees, the earth itself, something began to hum back. Mina screamed, "Stop!" But no one did. They sang louder, and the fog answered. Windows rattled, candles surged higher, the floor cracked. Somewhere a child's voice echoed in the rafters. "Mama, I'm cold!" The mother sobbed and sang louder. They weren't afraid. They were relieved, because in their hearts, twisted and tender, they believed, maybe just maybe, that the price was worth it. A face, a name, a touch, even if it wasn't real, even if it cost them everything else. Mina ran from the chapel. Outside, the village was disappearing, not burning, not crumbling, but sinking into fog and root. The sky had no stars, only black. And in every window she saw the same thing. A rocking cradle, an empty face, a mother singing. The lullaby did not stop. It hummed in the soil. It echoed in the pipes. It pulsed through the walls like blood through a dying heart. Mina couldn't escape it, not even in her own home. Each room breathed with sound, not loud, not angry, but persistent, like a mother whispering just beside your ear. The hollowing song had sunk its roots into wood and brick, into bone and memory. Even silence no longer felt safe. She tried to block the windows. She unplugged every clock, every chime. She scattered salt along the doors and sang no songs, spoke no names. But the song didn't need permission anymore. It was inside her house, inside her, and it was changing things. The floorboards began to swell, pressing upward as if something beneath was trying to rise. Nails pulled themselves loose with soft, creaking groans. Sometimes at night, Mina would hear thuds, small footsteps, or scratching from under the bed. She no longer entered the nursery, not since she'd heard the crib rocking on its own, not since she found a toy, a wooden rattle, lying in the center of the room, soaked in sap and beating like a heart. One evening, just after dusk, she noticed something new. The mirror in her hallway, cracked long ago and left unrepaired, was reflecting things that weren't there. Not shadows, children. They stood behind her reflection, dozens of them, all silent, all smiling, their eyes empty and gleaming. And as she turned, breath held, muscles locked, there was nothing there, but in the reflection they remained. She smashed the mirror, and from it shards the lullaby bled, soft and wet, like a wound made of music. Mina fled to the chapel, hoping for something holy, but there she found only bones, dozens of them, wrapped in old cloth and buried beneath the altar. Tiny skulls, bent spines, and in the center, a woman's corpse bound at the wrists and knees, her tongue nailed to a hymn book. Soraya, the original midwife, the one who sang first, the one who tried to warn them. The hymn book in her mouth was soaked in black sap, its pages sealed shut except for one, a single unholy verse. To open the door, sing in grief. To keep it open, hum in silence. To make it home, give it your children. Mina screamed. Outside, the fog was thickening again, but not blanketing the earth. It was rising from it, from the wells, from the cracks in the floor, from the mouths of sleeping mothers. And inside her home, Luca was waiting, not at the window, but beneath the floorboards. She could hear him, crawling, dragging himself just beneath her feet, humming, always humming. Then whispers joined him, voices she recognized, her mother, her unborn sister, the priest, the children. They whispered her name over and over. Mina, Mina, Mina. And then a single sentence from below. Lie down, let us in. The floor split, and something smiled through the cracks. The ground opened, not like an earthquake, not violent, not sudden, but slow, patient. Roots rose through the floorboards of every home in the village, not green or living, but black, slick with sap, twisted like tendons. And from beneath them came the lullaby, not sung now, swallowed. It moved like breath through the lungs of a dying world. Mina stood at her doorstep, watching the village unravel, one home at a time. The fog had thickened into a wall. It no longer drifted. It wrapped, it strangled, it swallowed rooftops, clogged chimneys, muffled screams. Cradles sat on porches, gently rocking. No children inside, just scraps of cloth, and hearts, tiny, perfect, still beating. The mothers no longer fought it. They stood barefoot in doorways, hair unbraided, humming through bloodied lips, their eyes empty, their hands raised to the mist. And the forest responded. Trees moved when they should not, leaves fell upward, and the wind carried not air, but names. Mina ran to the chapel, the only place that still held its shape. Inside, the altar bled. The bones beneath it had been disturbed, arranged, a ritual remade in bone and root. And at the center of it all, where Soraya's body once lay, now stood Luca, but not as before. His eyes had gone entirely black, pupils stretched wide across his face, his mouth too long, lips curled unnaturally. Veins of bark crept along his arms, pulsing with amber light. He opened his arms. "Mina," he said, But it wasn't him. It was the voice of the spirit. Female, male, many. You gave me a name. You gave me form. And now you will give me a home. The roof of the chapel groaned. Sap dripped from the stained glass like tears. And through the door, the mothers entered, one by one, carrying bundles. Each one unwrapped a child, but these weren't children anymore. Their limbs too long, their smiles too wide, their hearts pulsing visibly beneath translucent skin. Vessels. The spirit had used their grief like kindling, and now it feasted. One by one, the children were placed in the circle, and one by one they opened their mouths not to cry, but to sing. A harmony deeper than bone, a sound that filled the chapel with darkness. And outside, the village collapsed. Houses folded into the ground like paper and flame. Fields turned black, the well cracked open like an eye, and the forest walked forward. It came on roots and mist, on the legs of old gods, on the wings of birds with no eyes and too many mouths, and at the center of it all, the weeping tree, the mother of the hollowing song. She stepped into the village with smoke rising from her fingertips. She was no longer just a spirit. She was a god, reborn in worship and grief. And she was hungry. Mina stood at the center of the chapel, surrounded by mothers and children and things pretending to be both. Her brother, or the thing inside him, raised one hand. It said, "Sing," and every voice obeyed. The floor beneath Mina's feet gave way. She fell, and the world above closed like a mouth behind her.
Mina fell into darkness, but she did not land. She drifted, down, down through layers of breathless black, where soil gave way to shadow, and shadow gave way to memory. Whispers clung to her skin like cobwebs. They weren't words, they were verses. Echoes of the hollowing song, layered in thousands of voices, young, old, human, not. And then she stopped falling. She stood in a space with no walls, no ceiling, no time. Before her, the weeping tree, massive, endless, its roots spread like veins through the void. And wrapped within those roots, twisted and swaying, were mothers, hundreds, thousands, their faces locked in sorrow, their mouths parted in song, eyes open but blind, all of them humming. Mina stepped forward, her bare feet wet with something that wasn't water. It pulsed, it moved. The tree opened its bark like ribs, and from its center, the spirit emerged. She no longer pretended to be gentle. Her face was a shifting veil, grief, rage, motherhood, decay. Her voice came from inside Mina's skull. You called me. You kept me. Now finish what you began. Mina shook her head, trembling. No more. You sang with sorrow. Now pay with silence. The tree reached toward her with limbs of bark and bone, but Mina stepped back and began to sing, not the hollowing song. She sang the melody in reverse, a slow unraveling, a sorrow undone. The tree screamed. The mothers howled in unison, a sound not of pain, but of protest.
their mouths stretched, their eyes bled, but Mina kept singing. Each backward note cracked a branch, each reversed verse dimmed the roots. And then the voices began to fade. The song collapsed. Mina reached the final note, a single, sharp breath, and with it she offered herself, her body, her blood, her sorrow. She stepped into the roots, and the tree took her, not with hunger, but with reverence, like a debt finally paid. The spirit staggered, her face fracturing. "Why?" Mina whispered, "Because I remember who I am, and you are not him." Then everything fractured. Light bled through bark. The mothers disintegrated into mist. The lullaby died in the air, and the tree began to collapse, not with flame, not with sound, but with grace, as if letting go, as if sighing for the first time in centuries. The void swallowed itself, and silence returned. The village was quiet. No birds, no song, no fog. Just the soft wind weaving through broken shutters and sun-bleached grass. Where once homes stood, there were only husks, hollowed wood, open doors swaying slowly, empty cradles left rocking on their own. The chapel was ash, the well filled with roots, now brittle and dry. The weeping tree was gone, no bark, no sap, no shadow. Only a single ring of blackened earth remained, as if something had burned from the inside out. And in the silence that followed, life began again. Children were found at the edge of the forest, naked, silent, breathing, eyes blinking, hearts beating. They did not remember the lullaby. They did not remember what wore their faces. They only cried, and that was enough. The mothers wept, not in madness, but in clarity, as if waking from a dream that had lasted generations. Some tried to speak Mina's name. None could. It caught in their throats like a song half sung. Her home stood abandoned. Inside, dust gathered on the windows. The floorboards were sealed again, and the humming had stopped. Almost. Because on certain nights, when the fog is just right, when the moon hangs low and the wind carries old things, you can still hear it. A single voice, soft, steady, humming, not to summon, but to warn. They say it comes from the forest, from a space between trees that should not be there, from a shadow shaped like a girl who once sang with sorrow in her bones. She never returned, not as herself, not as anything else, but she left something behind, a silence that remembers. And in that silence, the hollowing song sleeps. But songs don't die. They wait, they listen, and sometimes, if your grief is too loud, if your heart is too cracked, if your sorrow hums through your teeth in the dark, the song will hear you, and it will hum back.